Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about the combination of generative AI and business intelligence, a combination that offers enormous potential, but also all sorts of challenges. To discuss that, I'm joined by a major industry leader. With me is Phong Lee, Chief Executive Officer at MicroStrategy. Phong, absolutely thrilled to have you with us today.
Jim, I'm excited to be here, and obviously this is a topic that I and MicroStrategy are passionate about. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. So I think that the combination of generative AI and business intelligence offers a lot of potential. We know that, but it feels like almost the marriage of opposites a little bit in that business intelligence has always been so steady and people rely on it for data analysis, whereas generative AI is new. It could be prone to hallucinations, a lot of potential, vast potential. So what is the current enterprise state of this emerging combined sector?
It's early, right? Right. It's nascent in many cases. MicroStrategy has been doing business intelligence, to your point, for over 30 years now.
Right.
We invented the sector as you know it, and there haven't been that many major innovations in this space, especially in the last 10 years. In fact, I like to think business intelligence lost its way a little bit going into the data visualization world, which
Hmm.
isn't really what I think of as business intelligence, getting true insights and actionable insights in your business. And Gen AI has, in my opinion, breathed new life into the BI space and redefine what's important, right? With Gen AI, what do you care about, right? It's often said now, it's really the underlying data used to train your LLM, data
Hmm.
used to produce your answers. But to date, Gen AI has largely dealt with unstructured words, right? And so if you ask it questions, it can answer you verbally very simple questions because it predicts the answer using words. And that's
Sure.
useful in a consumer context. It's useful in certain business contexts. But when you get into sort of the core of what businesses need, they need the answers to numerical data. I'm an ex-CFO of MicroStrategy. Like what I want to know when I ask a question to anybody, an analyst, or eventually a Gen AI bot,
Right.
my forecast for revenue or my product sales in this particular country for the next 6 months. I don't want a predictive answer. I want the answer. And
Sure.
that's what Gen AI plus BI starts to do and solves a problem that isn't solved today via just LLMs who are predicting verbal, word answers.
Mhm. Well, what about the issue of trust? Sometimes generative AI comes up with some pretty wacky answers, whereas we can't allow that in a BI environment.
Yeah, and that's why this combination is so important. What Gen AI gives you is it gives you the ability to ask a question in natural language.
Mhm.
It gives you an ability to get the answer back in natural language. And what it doesn't give you is numerical trustworthy answers. So if you combine this idea of something that is that's smart, right? Like that can understand what you're saying, right? And start to give you a predictive answer in very nice natural language
Mhm.
with the precision of BI and the data and the numbers, and frankly, the security layers that BI has built behind that, that intersection is what we're focused on. Very difficult engineering, especially prompt engineering. But when you get those two things together, Jim, when you get sort of this really nice, easy to use interface combined with the ability to give you trustworthy, secure, accurate answers, that's
Mhm.
magical.
Mhm. Well, I want to ask you about what a business should look for if they're shopping for a solution like this. But I want to back up even before that question and ask you, do you think businesses are ready for this? I mean, they think about the combination of Gen AI and BI and go, yeah, we're ready, or it's like, oh, we're not yet, maybe.
Well, I mean, what do you look for? Something that works, right? And
Mhm.
so, and when will you be ready? When you find something that you ask the question and you get a answer that is right 95% of the time. Like what happens today when somebody wants to ask a data question, right? Like best case, maybe they're going to a spreadsheet or a dashboard, they're doing some analysis. It takes them 2 days, maybe longer, 2 weeks to get a good answer, right? Worst case, they call up the person who's their data analyst that's, they've been working with for the last 5 years. He or she has immediate recall, very fast ability to do math in their head, and
Mhm.
says, yeah, I think it's 42%. Right?
Uh-huh.
How accurate are they? Who knows? But they're very credible. right?
Sure.
Now what if you knew that you had a data analyst bot? What if you had what if you had an HR analyst bot
Hmm.
in Microsoft Teams or in Slack? And you can go there, you can say, what do you expect my voluntary attrition in the technology department to be for the next 3 months? So not having to build a dashboard and take 2 weeks, not
Right.
having to call the data analyst or HR analyst, so you don't really know if they know the answer, right? And just go to the bot and it tells you, well, your attrition for the last 3 months has been 4%, but based on seasonality and some information we're getting from our employee engagement survey, we think it's going to be 6% for the next 3 months. And getting
Hmm.
that answer embedded in Microsoft Teams, underlying, it's the MicroStrategy BI engine plus some LLM giving you the answer. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? And it
Hmm.
gives you the answer back in 8 seconds.
Do you think we're in a world where using a business intelligence platform is going to require a prompt engineer? I mean, not for those easier questions, but for the more advanced queries, will we need a prompt engineer?
But and so that's what we are working on. We're not building an LLM, right? MicroStrategy doesn't need to because the large hyperscalers out there, whether it be Amazon, whether it be Microsoft, whether it be Google, anybody else, they're building the LLMs. What we
Hmm.
are doing is the prompt engineering, right? So that we can take somebody's question, turn it into a reasonable prompt to the LLM to give us a query to run on the data,
Hmm.
right? So, yes, a prompt engineer is a good skill to have, but just like you don't want the person who is the best data analyst, Excel modeler to be able to be required. You don't want to always have to have a prompt engineer. You just want the answer to the question.
Right.
So I guess what we're doing, where an LLM might be replacing, a data scientist, what we're trying to replace is the need to have a prompt engineer.
Mhm. And is that through natural language processing, or what is a little bit down in the weeds? How do you do that?
Yeah, so think about it this way, and for those who are not familiar with how MicroStrategy has worked for the last 30 years, right? We're a business layer on top of a data warehouse or on top of your transactional databases, et cetera. And in that business layer, we define the definitions and objects and metrics and attributes of a company, right? And usually somebody can, through drag and drop or through queries, then use that business layer to ask questions of the data, right? Or query and pull the data. That's what MicroStrategy has been doing for the last 30 years, right?
Hmm.
So now when we add Gen AI into that, what you're doing is, let's say you ask a question of MicroStrategy and use our AI BI capabilities. You're actually asking the question in natural language. What do you expect my attrition in the engineering department to be for the next 3 months? Right.
Right.
The first thing that we have to do there is interpret what that question actually means. And that's where the LLM is great. We send the question to the LLM along with the metadata, the structure of the underlying data. And the LLM comes back and says, this is what they meant. This is the query you should run against the MicroStrategy data. And then we go run the query like we always would do, which
Hmm.
gives us the performance. It's against structured data, it's against secure data. And then the answer comes back. And then we send the answer to the LM. The LM comes back and says, here's how you answer the question in a friendly tone. And
Hmm.
so we've just called the LLM. It gave us a query. We ran the query. We gave the answer back to the LLM. The LLM comes back and says, this is what you say. And after 2 round trips, we give the answer back to you. That's what we're doing essentially. So we're doing the prompt engineering in between and using the LLM for its natural language capabilities.
Makes perfect sense. So, all right, let's drill down into the MicroStrategy BI Gen AI offering. You've got a product called MicroStrategy One. What distinguishes this from competitors?
A few things. One, we're first to market. We launched in September of last year, and we release our software every month. So we have now had 9 cycles of improvement upon the software. Most of our competitors do not have a GA product today, right? They're still working off a beta product, and they're trying to get it to work. The
Mhm.
second piece is because we have the underlying, we'll call it the semantic layer, that business layer, right, which our competitors don't have, right? It allows us to, again, sort of what I just described, we're still running queries against our underlying data, which is performant, which can be trustworthy, which is secure. That's huge, right? Because, we started this conversation of, well, if you don't trust the data, you can't really trust the output of the AI.
Sure.
Well, here we start with trusted data, right? And therefore you can trust the output. So we're first to market. We have the underlying semantic layer. And together with those things, we're in market and people try it and it works, right? Everything else you're doing, I've had folks try beta versions of competitive tools and they look nice on the surface, but you don't get an answer that you can actually run your business with. And I'll say the third thing that we do is because we're an open ecosystem, right? Like over time, you can use any LLM, you can use any cloud, you can embed the output, not just in a dashboard, but you can build your own bot that you can embed in a web page, as an example, in any application you have.
Can you talk at all about some of the growing pains of developing the product? It seems like the technology combination is so new that you may have encountered some challenges, or maybe the clients have. Are there any challenges involved in the process?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we measure ourselves on two dimensions of output. One is speed, and the second is accuracy,
Mhm.
right? And we're striving for when someone asks a question of the data, that give an answer right greater than 90% of the time, right?
Mhm.
And generally speaking, if I could ever get 90% accuracy from anybody in the company when I ask them a question,
Right,
I would be
right,
pretty darn happy, right? Even a
sure.
simple question. So we feel pretty good about the 90%. On the speed piece, right? In some cases, we're reliant on the underlying speed of the LLM. So as we went from GPT-3 to GPT-4, we saw a 2x improvement in speed. So we're
Mhm.
starting to get better and better. And generally we're giving answers in 8 to 10 seconds. People are very happy to wait 8 to 10 seconds versus 8 to 10 days to get an answer, or even eight to
Right,
10 hours to get an answer,
sure.
8 to 10 minutes. So that's not too bad. Um, back on the accuracy of the answer. The other challenge we've had is understanding the nomenclature of a company, right? Like, so,
Mm,
is revenue and sales the same thing, or turnover, right? And that's just general, company agnostic terms.
right,
Imagine if you're working for a pharmaceutical company, right? They've renamed certain pharmaceuticals every 2 years.
sure.
And or you talk about geography in a multinational, right? Like different countries, different cities, different names of business units. So we now have the capability for folks just to basically upload a data dictionary, a set of summaries, so that we can include that in what we tell the chatbot, and that's fixed that. But if you ask a question and you use different terms that mean the same thing, a chatbot wouldn't normally just know the language of that particular enterprise. So
Of
we've learned
course.
a lot about that in our training chatbot on that. And that's when it gets really cool, is the personality of the chatbot is not just a financial analyst, but it's a financial analyst at MicroStrategy, or it's a financial analyst at, X company. That's when it gets really neat.
That's really interesting, actually. It's fascinating way to cure that problem. I think the big question is, what do you see as the future of business intelligence and generative AI? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of potential here, but some challenges as well.
Yeah, so I'm excited about the future. Like I said at the beginning, this is the biggest change, to the biggest additive change to business intelligence that we've seen in decades, right? And look, Gen AI has done that for every sector of software, but BI especially. So I'm really excited about what the future portends. Like I think as we move over, as what's happened in the last 10, 15 years, well, I'll go, what's happened in the last 30 years in the BI space is we've tried to give information out to the fingertips at the edge of an organization, right?
Mhm.
And that came in the form of dashboards and applications. And what I think people have found is the farther you go away from corporate, the farther you go away from core, the less likely people are to be comfortable consuming that information in a traditional back dashboard or a traditional grid report.
When
So,
you say core, you mean core data? Sorry to interrupt.
sorry, the core of the organization, right? Like
Okay,
core corporate versus the edge being a field worker. Imagine like a finance person in corporate versus a store manager in a retail store, right?
gotcha.
And if many would argue this, getting the data to the store manager in the retail store to take the right action, much more important than the corporate finance person having the data to take the right action, because he or she will find a way to get to that data.
Mhm.
Whereas the store manager is going to use instinct rather than consume the data in a grid report, right?
Mhm. Right.
Um, so what's happened, what we tried to do over the last 30 years, those edge workers, right? How do we get them to use BI more and more? And so we went from traditional grid reports showing up in your email or printed out. It was like, oh, well, okay, forget printouts. Let's give them an email. Well, they're not really reading their emails. Let's give it to them in the web where they can self-serve. Well, they don't really go to the web. Let's give it to them on a mobile device. Okay, now we're moving somewhere. And then we went backwards and said, oh, why don't we let them build their own visualizations? Well, we know they're not doing that, right? What Gen AI does is it solves that last mile problem where that retail store worker, rather than all of these consumption paradigms that they don't use, now just let them ask a question.
Hmm.
Natural language, what's my inventory, right? At this particular point, into a mobile device, into a headphone, into a Zebra device, whatever it is. Now we're solving this final mile problem, last mile problem of the employee at the front line using BI and data to make decisions. And I think Gen AI solves that last mile problem.
Well, so what you're really talking about is the democratization of generative AI, so more workers can use it.
Yeah, it's democratization of data. I don't like that term because it gets used and weaponized into sort of everybody should get access to everything, right? That's not really the answer. The answer is people get access to what they need when they need it, the precise information.
Mhm. Great. Phong, I think you said it. A lot of good stuff. I certainly learned a lot. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today.
Thank you for your time. Super exciting time for BI and AI, very exciting time for MicroStrategy too. So I appreciate your interest.